Hello, friends. It's Nancy with Astrology and Angel Mediums. I know it's been a little bit of time since I've posted a video, but I wanted to do a pick a pile for today, and I hope that you guys enjoy it. So I'm going to give you guys a couple of seconds to kind of figure out which pile you feel drawn to, and then we will get started with the readings. Are you ready? All right. We're going to start with pile number 1. Let's move these guys out of the way. Those over there. All right, so pile number 1. This is an angel tarot deck that I have, and the crystal is going to be celestite, which is fantastic for communicating with your angels. It's great for like clearing kind of communication issues, to focus on that higher divination, as well as, opening yourself up to connecting to your intuition in some new and different ways. So it is this beautiful kind of calming energy. I do love having this in like a space when there's like children or things like that. I think it's a wonderful crystal to utilize to kind of co-create a beautiful divine connection with the higher self. So we're going to put that to the side and let's see what the cards have to say today. So, pile number 1. All right, first card we have is the Two of Wands, the Two of Pentacles, the Lovers, the Five of Cups, and I think this one, Ace of Wands. Okay, so we have these 5 cards here. So the very first card I got is the Two of Wands reversed. So I'm going to look at this energy as if maybe there is a lack of connection. Maybe there's been a lack of understanding in some ways. Maybe it's hard for you to kind of trust in the unknown. Maybe you're struggling with the possibility of the horizons that are kind of opening up around you. I think that with this energy of this card is that sometimes, especially with it reversed, it can feel a little bit like there's like a spiritual blockage. And maybe that's why you were drawn to celestite, is to kind of clear that energy, to kind of reconnect in some ways. And so with this being a number 2 card, and then also followed up by the Two of Pentacles, the Two of Pentacles to me is really just saying like, you got to bring things back into balance. You're trying to do too much. You're juggling too many things. Physically, something is kind of not working. Maybe there's a lot of options and choices that are opening up for you. So it can be a little bit challenging, especially with the Two of Wands, maybe feeling a little bit disconnected from what you spiritually would like to do with your life and what is physically happening in your life. So it can feel a little bit like you're having to make different choices, because we have the Lovers, which to me is really just a card of aligning yourself with a life that you really love. It can talk about that community connection, relationships, in the sense of there is this element that feels a little bit more elevated in some ways. So while the other 2 cards, in the sense of like having the number 2, which can talk about partnerships and relationships, this can feel like maybe you're wanting to have deeper connections, wanting to really fortify who it is that you surround yourself with. But when I think of this energy too, is that I think it's very much this card of bringing forth the sort of things that you really desire for yourself and really loving the things that are happening around you in your life. And I think with the Two of Wands reversed and the Two of Pentacles is that maybe it's saying that maybe you're coming to this realization that it's time for you to start choosing and bringing things back into balance so that you can really start enjoying your life the way that you want. Now, the Five of Cups, this can usually talk about emotional withdrawal or some sort of emotional turmoil. There is maybe some things that have kind of come up and arisen that have made you feel very emotionally disconnected in some ways, and also feeling as if like there's some sort of emotional loss within your situation. So whether that is like, having to change the sort of work that you've been doing, maybe having to make different choices, there is a sense of that like something has maybe not gone the way that you thought it was going to, but it doesn't mean that this is something that will last forever. So it's okay for you to have the feelings that you do, especially if you were like, I chose these things. And sometimes whenever we're opening up new paths, we have this sense of not really recognizing and realizing how much grief comes from change and how challenging it can be for some of us to kind of walk away from something, even if we do love it, even if it is something that we've always been excited about or not. Now, next to that, we have the Ace of Wands, which the Ace of Wands to me is always a card of like new vitality, really opening new doors. It is very much like the being able to kind of walk into something that feels a lot more aligned. And I think it's interesting because we started with the Two of Wands, but reversed, and we're ending with the Ace of Wands. So I think that instead of kind of staying in that same loop that maybe you have been in the past, you're breaking away from whatever you feel has been holding you back emotionally, maybe feeling like, yeah, it's hard and it's okay if I struggle with how I feel about things. But with the Ace of Wands is that it's giving you this sense of being able to kind of elevate where you've been and move past any kind of stuck energy. So I do think that maybe there's going to be some things being presented to you that will open you up to really living your life in a way that feels a lot more connected for you. So I have this like mystical journey deck over here. All right, so we have resilience. To me, this card is just really saying like, hey, you have been doing what you needed to do. You've been growing through all of the lessons. You are literally like that rose growing through the concrete. And so it can feel very disheartening in the sense of always feeling like you have to rely on your strength, having to rely on what you've known, what you've been through and things of that nature. But it doesn't mean that you should close yourself off to the possibility of how this can kind of show up for you. So while it is okay that you have overcome so many different things in your life, it's not about having to prove how resilient you are all of the time. Because I do think that resilience is beautiful, but it also requires a lot of vulnerability to really recognize what is trying to kind of happen for you. All right, so out of this, feel like this one. All right, go on an adventure. Today's a day to try something daring. Maybe not today. It's a very, we're having a snowmageddon here in Colorado, but if the weather is nice where you're at, or maybe you need to plan some time to kind of get out and do something different, whether it's taking time out to take care of yourself and really reconnecting with you, because maybe with the resilience card is that it's saying that maybe you have forgotten to take some time out to take care of you and go on that adventure. Like the Ace of Wands is that maybe you've been too caught up in your responsibilities and you're feeling a little bit emotionally behind in some ways, or maybe emotionally blocked. And so the Ace of Wands is saying, hello, let's move into this energy, and let's not forget that it's time for us to kind of explore and have a little bit of fun. So I do have these other cards over here. I have 4 decks in here actually, but I think I want to pull, maybe we'll do one of these. All right. So here we have snake medicine. So this is all about eternity, energy and motion, the magician, shedding, knowledge of the self. And I think it very much kind of talks about this sort of energy of like, what is transforming? What is shape-shifting? What is changing in your life? What is it that you need to let go of? When I think of snake medicine, I know a lot of people think of like snake sheds and things like that, but I think of just the energy of being very close to the ground, moving in stealth, being very resilient in different ways, as well as like opening yourself up to the possibility that there is something that you need to kind of be aware of in your environment and be very stealthy when you're kind of moving in it, like the snake in the grass. And I think, again, it's very much this like energy and motion. Things are trying to shift. Things are trying to move for you right now, but maybe it's hard for you to see what is trying to move for you at this point in time. So it's going to be a little noisy. I guess I should have warned you before. All right. Some messages for pile number 1. All right. Okay. All right. Very first thing I'm seeing here is this snail shell. And this being reversed, it's almost saying that maybe you feel like you're losing some of that sense of protection and home. Maybe you feel like it's hard to kind of connect to the inner child and kind of enjoy things as they're coming. And maybe it's a recognition and realization that you're outgrowing something and you're ready to kind of move into like the next big thing. But there is a little bit of fear about those things that are shifting and moving and how you are moving into this next phase. Now, next to that, I have this turtle bone, which to me just says that maybe things haven't been moving quite as quickly as you want. There's been, I don't want to say restriction, but maybe it's kind of saying like, hey, remember, slow and steady wins the race. You don't have to rush into like the next big thing. This being upside down, the airplane, to me, it really represents that maybe you're too much in the mind, you're overthinking things. Maybe it's not the best time to kind of book a flight, so to speak. And I don't mean like don't do it. Maybe it's like go on an adventure, but maybe not having to make it like a really big deal. Like if you're like, oh, well, I can't, go to Portugal this week, so obviously I can't go on an adventure. Maybe it's more of just kind of challenging how you view the adventures in your life at this point in time. Now, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't travel. I think that maybe there is like, again, kind of that transformation that needs to happen with how you view you going on an adventure and being able to kind of break away from things. Next to that, I have the moon, and this was reversed. So to me, this can just signify that there's a disconnection from intuition. There's a disconnection from nurturing yourself. Maybe it's time to start listening to that inner voice once again and not ignoring those kind of intuitive hits, or not allowing yourself to be kind of derailed or distracted by other people's stuff. But it's interesting because then I have Lucky, the little horseshoe, right next to it. And I think that this is just really representing that maybe it's time for you to start trusting that things are going to change, that things are shifting, that it doesn't always have to be as challenging as it has been. And maybe it's time to kind of refocus on your dreams and kind of let go of the things that have been holding you back in some way. When I think of a dream catcher, I think it's very much of like catching the things that are holding us back. So I think it's like a sieve or a colander or something like that, where it's like, it's catching what it needs and letting other things kind of float through it. So maybe it's saying like, hey, it's time to kind of catch all of those blocks, catch all of those limitations or those limiting thoughts and those things that have maybe blocked you in some way. So it's time to kind of break away and not stay stuck in what you think you should be doing. So I hope that makes sense. But thank you so much for joining me, pile 1. We're going to move on to pile number 2. Hello, pile number 2. This is going to be your reading. I hope you guys enjoy it. And the very first thing I want to talk about is this crystal. And I am using the Rosebud Tarot and a rose quartz in the shape of a heart. So to me, this is really about that heart healing, that heart chakra, that nurturing, loving, kind, compassionate sort of energy that maybe you've been lacking in some ways. And I think that maybe it's a reminder to be a little bit more tender with yourself, to kind of take some time out to honor the things that you need, the things that you desire, the things that your heart is really needing at this time. And maybe it's time to kind of focus on some of the interpersonal relationships around you. Now, while this is not a relationship deck per se, it does have beautiful imagery. So we're going to see what cards we have for you guys. So let's see. Curiosity of Earth. Oh, the Velocity of Fire. The Moon. Generosity of Fire. Sorry if you hear my dog. And the Two of Air. This is good. I think we're good here. All right. So a lot of court cards today. So the first card I want to talk about is going to be the Curiosity of Earth, which essentially, this is going to be the Page of Pentacles in traditional tarot. So it has a lot of this kind of like going out into the world, trying something new, really being a little bit naive in the sense of the things that you're kind of going after, the things that you're prioritizing at this time. So this is maybe a good card for someone that maybe is starting a new job, maybe like starting a new career, maybe starting a new space for themselves, whether it's like they've moved or they're planning on moving or something along those lines. And to me, this can also just represent that maybe you need to kind of reconnect to that childlike wonder of like the physical self, the physical body, physical life, money, career, things of that nature. Now, when I think of this card, I think that it's kind of saying like, when is the last time you had a little bit of fun or really kind of explored what it is that's kind of speaking to you in different ways? Now, next to that, we have the velocity of fire, which is essentially the Knight of Wands, which is, this can just mean to me, it's like you need to kind of go after what you're passionate about and what is like driving you in some ways. Like, what are you passionate about? What is lighting you on fire? Where is that, like that momentum, that movement? So if maybe you've been wanting to kind of do something different with what it is that you have going on in your day-to-day life, the velocity of fire says, all right, here we go. Let's do this. This can also represent like some sort of message being received in some way. And because it is kind of this wand's energy or fire, I think it's a very spiritual kind of element that's coming up here with this card as well. I think that it's kind of bringing this energy of like, okay, what is it that is physically speaking to me? What is it that I really want with this energy? But then we have the moon, which I think, this being the only major card I pulled here, is that it can represent this sort of energy of maybe there's something that you're not seeing quite so clearly. There is some stuff that maybe needs to be confronted, especially when it comes to your desires, what it is that you need. And it's interesting because the moon rules over Pisces, which we're still in Pisces season. Venus just moved into Pisces. We're getting a lot of this kind of dreamy, not really seeing things quite so clearly, because we do have Neptune, Saturn, Sun, and Venus all in Pisces right now. And so maybe some of the things that like we value are a little hard for us to really like see clearly, especially when it comes to our spiritualism, what we're physically doing in our lives, kind of how we feel about what we truly believe in and how we're wanting to show up. So I think with the moon is that it's saying that maybe it's time to kind of pull back the curtain, see what is going on behind the scenes. What do we need to confront? What hasn't been healed? What needs to be addressed? So there may be a little bit of a emotional turmoil, I would say, that kind of comes up with the energy of the moon. Now, the only reverse card that we have here is the generosity of fire, which this is essentially the Queen of Wands, this being reversed. I think that this is almost saying like maybe we've been feeling a little bit of a distraction or a lack of momentum and movement when it comes to the things that we want. Now, the Queen of Wands to me is definitely this kind of energy of like warmth and nurturing, a mover and a shaker. This is someone who like knows their shit. They're doing what they need to do. With this being reversed, I feel like there's a little bit of inversion that's kind of happened here, where maybe we feel like we need to take care of ourselves. We need to give ourselves a little bit of this energy. And so we're feeling a little bit disconnected from that divine feminine wands energy of like driving forward and doing what we need. So I think that this could kind of indicate a time for a little bit of like resting, reconnecting with yourself, maybe kind of seeing what it is that is driving you at this time and what it is that you're passionate about. And then finally, we have the Two of Air, which would essentially be the Two of Swords. Now, to me, this upright would definitely represent that you're refusing to see something. Something is not clear. Something is not really coming up the way that it should. There is a little bit of a disconnect from, like your heart. And I think maybe that's why we have this rose quartz heart kind of energy, kind of trying to get us to connect back to the heart and not sit there in the higher mind, overthinking everything and being a little disconnected from how we truly feel. Now, with this, I think that it's maybe saying that some sort of communication is not really going the way that we anticipated. Maybe there's been a lack of connection in some ways. And I think it kind of, goes to show like, kind of moving out of Venus and Aquarius, that sort of energy of like really trying to kind of step back into how we feel and learning how to trust our intuition once more and not feeling so disconnected from things. So I do think that all of these cards are kind of saying that maybe it's time for you to reflect on, what sort of people are you surrounding yourself with? What sort of connections and relationships are supporting you at this time, especially when you feel a little bit more tender or whenever you're doing some of this maybe deeper work within yourself or having a lot of reflections about what it is that you really want, what it is that you need, what it is that you are prioritizing moving forward. So I hope that makes sense, but let's see. Let's get a little bit of clarity here. Oh my God. I literally shuffled this deck. Let's see. Do we want this one? I literally shuffled it before I started. So, all right. So we're going to talk about this, but it's funny because I keep pulling this card and I keep like shuffling the cards, and there's like 40 cards in that deck. So resilience, I think that again, like I said with pile number one, we are given this like opportunity where we feel like we're overcoming so much, and it can feel a little bit challenging to open ourselves up to be vulnerable so that we can have connection with one another and to kind of reestablish those connections with others, especially when we feel like we've been having to kind of go it alone for so long. And I think it's interesting to have that card show up again. And maybe that is where the heart chakra kind of energy is coming through again, where we're kind of feeling the sense of like, man, I've been like really resilient in a lot of ways. It's hard for me to kind of connect with others. So let's see what we have for inner child work. So write a letter to your inner child. And I think maybe that is where connection and resilience is kind of coming through, is that maybe we're refusing to see some of the things within ourselves that we need to confront in order to be able to kind of move into these other energies that we see for ourselves. So maybe it's time to kind of honor where you've been, what you need, what your soul has been maybe desiring in some ways that has felt a little bit disconnected. So I do have like 4 decks in here. Let's see. We're going to pick one from the Mystic Rebels Oracle. So expand your perspective. And I think with this is that maybe, again, we've been limiting ourselves because we haven't really been seeing something clearly, or we haven't really addressed some of the emotional things that have come up because we've been too busy with like what we need to do in the world, what we feel we should be focusing on. And I think with expanding your perspective is that by healing these different aspects of ourselves, writing this letter to your inner child, recognizing that while resilience is good, we're lacking connection. I think by expanding your perspective and not trying to do everything on your own, you'll be able to really rise above things that have stopped you previously. All right, let's take a couple charms here. It's loud. Sorry for those that are a little sensitive, or I got some stuff coming out. All right. And then we also had a couple other things. All right. So this to me, it's a little twig, right? It just talks about branching out. Things are maybe not quite so sturdy. I think that it's really saying that there's new growth that's possibly happening, but maybe we need to recognize that it's going to take a little bit of effort. It is going to take a little bit of time. I also got lucky with the previous pile. So I think that this is, again, kind of recognizing and having a little bit more gratitude over the things that we have, the things that we've experienced. And since it's a horseshoe, to me, that can also represent like setting our foot down and like really setting those boundaries in some way so that we can really find our happiness in different aspects. And I think that that's really essentially what is trying to kind of manifest for you. Now we have the little mushroom, which to me can just talk about, you know, mushrooms typically grow out of things that have died. They're decomposers, right? So they're here to kind of transmute and alchemize things that are no longer living and creating something new with that. So I think with the mushroom, and I think this is rhodochrosite, I think that it's very much about maybe there is old relationships and old connections that have held you back, and maybe it's time to kind of decompose those stories and alchemize and co-create new fertile ground for what it is that you want moving forward, as well as like nourishing yourself with the things that maybe haven't really worked out. And finally, I have this raccoon penis bone, which can just talk about sensuality, sexuality, male drive. And I think it goes very well with the Knight of Wands or Knight of Fire, or what is Messenger Velocity of Fire, I think is what it's called here. Sorry. So I think it's really saying like, what are you going after? What are you chasing after? What is it that's driving you? What is it that you are excited about? And if you haven't been, why not? Because I think it's saying this is your time. So let's get into it. So thank you so much for joining me, Pile 2. I hope you have a great and wonderful rest of your day. Take care, take it easy, and make good choices. Hello, pile number 3. Thank you for joining me. I hope that this reading finds you well. So the first thing I want to talk about is we have the Spacious Tarot here, and we also have Black Tourmaline, which Black Tourmaline to me is very much about protecting. It is grounding. It can really bring forth this sort of energy of like clearing any kind of negative energy that you feel is presently affecting you in some way. I also like to associate it very deeply with like the root chakra or the base chakra. I feel like it's because it has this grounding kind of clearing energy. is that maybe this is a reminder to make sure that you are doing what you can to protect yourself, to ground yourself. I don't know why I keep saying grind. Ground yourself and really bring this energy back to you. So sorry if you can hear my dog. She's walking around. Okay. Let's see what the cards have to say for pile number 3. All right, we have 8 of Pentacles reversed. We have the Explorer of Cups. We have the Hanged Man reverse. The Moon. I just got the Moon in the other reading as well. And 5 of Pentacles. Okay. So, obviously, with the 8 of Pentacles reversed, I feel like this energy just talks about perfectionism, dedicated effort. So there may be kind of a sense of like maybe not getting that recognition for your hard work and efforts. Maybe you feel as if like there's things that are happening. Sorry, my dog is drinking, so if you guys can hear it in the background. I think that the biggest thing with this is that maybe you feel like some of your hard work is not being recognized in some way. There is a little bit of like a distraction kind of happening, or maybe it's hard for you to focus on what it is that you're trying to do and how you are going to kind of move with this energy. Now, the 8 of Pentacles typically to me represents this kind of sense of like bringing forth that structure, working hard towards your goals. So maybe there's something that has happened that has kind of kept you from being able to see your work being, recognized in some way. Now, to me, this can also say that maybe you've been a little bit disconnected from the things that you're doing, and so it makes it a little bit challenging. Now, the Explorer of Cups, this is essentially going to be the Knight of Cups. So to me, this is very much like this romantic, creative, illusion sort of energy happening with things, is that maybe you feel like, oh, I want to chase after my dreams. I don't really want to keep doing the things that I've been doing. Or maybe there's a little bit of a sense of escapism that tends to come with the energy here of like trying to go after what it is that you desire and really finding what is driving you and what it is that you desire and are looking for yourself. Now, I do think that this does present an opportunity for something new to come into your life, especially if you've been feeling a little bit disrupted or dysregulated with the things that have been happening previously. So with the Hanged Man or the Hanged One reverse, this to me says like that lack of suspension, or there is going to be less of a sense of like sacrifice in some way, shape, or form. So this is a major card. So it is kind of bringing the sense of like these things that are trying to happen, or these dreams or these desires, are finally like going to see some traction. You're going to see things moving a little bit faster. You're going to feel as if things are a little bit moving in the right direction. This is definitely a card of like releasing any kind of expectation that there's going to be some holdups, or that there's a little bit of like you have to kind of wait for things to kind of change. So I do think that if you've been feeling like, man, things have not been moving, things have not been going, this card is saying, all right, that's enough. We're changing it up. We're moving on. There's no more of this sense of having to wait to kind of change our perspective or to observe things from a different point of view. So things will be shifting. I'm not going to say like super fast, but I do think that there is this expectation that things are finally going to start having that move, especially if it's something having to do with like your life, with dreams, with even like career kind of based stuff, or maybe you feel like, oh, things really need to kind of change. I don't really like what I've been doing, but I've been kind of stuck here. Now, the Moon is, again, this kind of card of like confronting certain things. There's shadow aspects that are coming up here. There's something that maybe is not clearly being seen the way that maybe we think that it should. And as I said, and I think the Moon has come out in all of the readings, actually, now that I think about it. No, it didn't. It came in pile 2 and pile 3. So the Moon to me really talks about, it rolls over Pisces season. So this to me is really poignant at this time, because it's kind of saying like something's trying to shift here. Something's trying to change here. Something needs to be addressed. Something needs to be confronted, especially if you've been holding back in some ways. It's time to kind of really go after what it is that you want, what it is that you need. Now, the thing with the moon is that it has this kind of emotional energy to it as well. So I think it is kind of saying, like, what are you putting into your efforts at this time? What are you carrying with you moving forward? What is it that maybe is finally being illuminated in some ways? Because we do have the full moon coming up on March 25th in Libra. And so I think it is kind of saying, like, okay, what are we kind of needing to balance in different ways of our lives? What is being illuminated between who we are and what we actually need in the people and the relationships around us? Now, the Five of Pentacles is typically a card of like strife and challenges and obstacles. It's a card that can talk about like a sense of lack. But I also like to look at it as like there's a sense of feeling a little bit alone. And I think that's kind of the meaning I want to go with right here, because as we see this little goat, he's kind of traveling up to the mountain by himself. And I think that's kind of how a lot of us may be feeling right now, is that we're feeling very lonely. We're feeling very like people aren't really seeing us for who we are. We've had to suspend a lot of things. And so we feel a little bit like we're out in space by ourselves in some ways. And I think with the Five of Pentacles is that it's saying like you've been doing everything that you needed to. Yes, there may be a little bit of a sense that something is changing, something is a little bit outside of your control, but the Five of Pentacles is saying like, look at how far you've come, and this is all just going to continuously get better from here. So it's really up to you to choose who you're going to invite into your little world and what it is that maybe you need to kind of deal with by taking this time out to kind of be alone, to kind of reconnect with yourself. So I hope that makes sense. We're going to pull a couple other cards just to see what's up. And so here we have energy shift. Who doesn't want that, right? I think with this is just really reflecting that things are finally changing. And it's interesting because we have the number 12. The number 12, it was kind of giving me hanged man kind of energy too. So it's like, you know, changing that perspective, because whatever way we put the card, because of how this is done, is it's like the similar image. So I think that this is almost saying like, what are you looking for? What is it that needs to kind of change? And whether the energy shifting is just because we're moving into spring next week and we're finally opening ourselves up to the possibility of rebirth, even though it is a very snowy day here in Colorado. I think it's really saying like you need to start that energy shift with yourself. You need to ground yourself and kind of rebalance and clear what has been blocking you, so that energetically you can kind of bring things back into alignment. All right, so here we have find your haven. There's a place of wonder waiting just for you, whether that is looking within yourself, whether that is, you know, taking some time out to reconnect to you, whether it's like reconnecting to like those dreams that you had at one point, those things within yourself that maybe you've been putting off, that maybe have been challenging for you to be able to move forward from, because maybe you felt like you weren't allowed. All right, so I have 4 decks in here, and I think I'm going to do sacred symbols today. And again, new moon. So the next new moon is actually going to be April 8th, I believe, and that is going to be the beginning of the eclipses in the Aries and Libra axis, which is going to be touching upon the north and south nodes, which can bring up a lot of changes and a lot of unexpected sort of energy when it comes to our interpersonal relationship with ourselves. And having so much moon imagery here, I think that maybe there is this kind of sense of you need to kind of honor your phases, honor what works for you, maybe like tune back into what needs to shift. What have you not been kind of paying attention to around yourself at this time? So I think with the new moon is that it's saying even in that darkness, even in that kind of unexpected sort of energy that may feel a little bit like scary, to be quite honest, is that maybe it's a time to kind of rest and reconnect and not be so worried about what are you putting forth moving forward, what it is that you like are doing to make other things kind of come together and make sense. I think this energy shift is also kind of connected to this new moon, because again, with the eclipses, it's bringing this unexpected sort of energy that is going to feel like it's a little bit beyond our control. All right, so it's going to be a little loud, but let's, oh my goodness, I think I put too much stuff in here, so. All right. All right. We have so many things that fell out too. So a lot more bones and things. So let's see. Do we need these? I think we need this one. Not this one. Not this one. Not this one. Okay. All right. So the very first one I want to talk about is this little vertebrae piece. I think it really talks about remaining flexible while also finding the supports that allow you to feel like you have exactly what you need and what you want. But again, there's a sense that needs to be kind of added there with that flexibility. Now, the luggage can just talk about, hey, there's a lot of stuff here that you need to unpack. Maybe you've been blocking, taking care of this because you've been too busy with other projects or other things, that it's been hard for you to kind of dive a little bit deeper and undo or kind of take out all of these things that maybe have kind of kept you stuck. Now, it's funny, we got two puzzle pieces, right? Maybe you feel like you just don't really fit in. Maybe you feel like your puzzle has not really had an opportunity to come together. And I think that the thing with the puzzle pieces is that recognition that sometimes we're trying to put ourselves in places where it's not meant for us. It's not that we don't fit in. It's just, it's not our place. And so we need to kind of move past this thing and expectation that, oh, I have to force myself to kind of be where I'm at because this is where I'm being led to be. And sometimes our travels, whether it's physical or spiritual or emotional or even mental, they're not like our final destination in a lot of ways. And I think some of us, we get caught up in that, like, I have to make this fit. I have to make this work. And so maybe this is kind of saying like, you need to break away. You need to find your puzzle. Now, this is a rib bone. So this can just talk about restriction. It can talk about constriction. It can talk about protection, because if we think of rib bones, they protect everything that's pretty significant within ourselves, like our lungs, our heart. And so it is very much this protective kind of bone. And so I think it's really saying, like, how are you protecting yourself? How are you grounding yourself? How are you keeping out other people's stuff from your heart, from yourself, from your center? What sort of things are you breathing life into at this time? And what is it that maybe has been held back because you have all of this stuff and it's hard for you to find that flexibility in things? So I hope that makes sense. I want to say thank you so much for joining me, Pile 3. I hope you have a great rest of your week. Take care. Take it easy. As always, thank you for joining me. Have a good one and stay safe, you guys. Bye.